Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I want to start off this video with kind of an introduction, just a little bit. First and foremost, we are in the midst of summertime. So far, I reviewed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, I reviewed the Sleepaway Camp movies just recently, just reviewed another film called The Ritual, and now I got a review to start off my series of reviews with another friend of mine named Stranger Grayson. I'll put his channel link down in the comments section or in the description, probably in the description. That seems like the place that makes sense. So check out his channel, really cool guy. We talked recently about collabing on these things. We wanted to collab for a long time, but here we are finally doing it. And it's going to be for the OG Friday the 13th series, which we haven't had an entry in since 2009. Now, I don't know about Grayson, but what I'm going to do probably is cover every movie, which he's going to do as well, but also the documentaries. His name was Jason, and then the big, like, 8-hour, 10-hour, whatever it is, documentary, Crystal Lake Memories, which is based on a book. Because I love these so much, I never did get around to reviewing the Never Sleep Again documentary about Nightmare on Elm Street. When I was reviewing those, was it last year? I think last year I kind of started, and then I stopped and started and stopped. But anyway, Friday the 13th is what we're going to be talking about. This particular video, as the title said, was about the OG 1980 movie, the first ever, the reaction, cash-in, whatever, which is completely something you can't ignore. It's a total cash-in on Halloween from 78, 2 years previous. But this is the beginning of a legend of horror. For me, the OG monsters were Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. Out of all the other monsters, like the Mummy and like the Creature, as iconic as they are and as great as those movies are, I still think the big three of that time were the Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, as I said. But then it became a new thing in the 80s to have Jason, Michael, Freddy. As much as I love Chucky, as much as I love... well, I don't love Leatherface, but some certain things about his movies, depending on which ones we're talking about. As much as I love certain things, the 80s really brought out the best of Michael Myers, Jason, and Freddy, and really made them the new horror icons, and to me, they're debatably possibly more popular than Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, even though you see those characters a lot more in a lot of things compared to these newer characters from the 80s. So, this is the beginning of an era. Even though this film may or may not have anything to do with Mr. Jason Voorhees. As many of you know, this film doesn't really involve him. It's not till part 2 that we get him. But I don't want to spoil anything about this movie. This is still a murder mystery. Like many slashers, they kind of took over that once upon a time. And this is the set that I have. It was released years ago. I remember being in a Walmart and finding this set, like all of these movies in 2-packs, for like $5 a piece. And I grabbed them all. Here's the original with the Friday the 13th uncut, which, by the way, I don't think I've ever seen just the original cut version. Every version I've ever seen has always been the uncut version with lots of gore, which not really, but that's another discussion for later on. But I also have part 2 in here, which I'm currently watching right now. So these movies, I had a lot of these sets there. I had my mom's ex-boyfriend who had the 3 and 4 2-pack, and he stole it. He sucks. But, so, whatever. Anyway, Friday the 13th, uncut, which, let's just call it what it is. It's the same thing. It has a little bit of extra, maybe a second longer on the kills, and that's about it. Not really much more. So, Friday the 13th, the 1980 original, where do you even start with this? It's kind of like that Child's Play, Night of the Living Dummy, Goosebumps issue, that the first book is not like the rest of the series, where you know what's going on, you know who the monster is, like Slappy or Chucky or whatever. It's kind of that type of thing. You can't really talk about this movie without spoiling it, and most people know the ending of it, so why am I even doing spoiler-free reviews? But I do that typically, because I don't like to get into too much and ruin too much for people who haven't seen certain movies, so I'm sorry, but you'll get kind of my vague thoughts about certain things that I think will still help you get to your conclusions on how I feel. So, basically a camp called Camp Crystal Lake is going to open up again after basically a prologue that we saw that showed 25 years previously, where somebody in a POV camera shot that we were pretending to be caught 2 kids having sex at Camp Crystal Lake before it had shut down years ago. And those people get murdered. And then the camp shuts down for about 25 years. We open up again about 1980 or so. A man named Steve Christie, who I think is one of the better performances in the film. There's not a whole lot of memorable ones, but I do think he's fairly decent in here. He's trying to open up Camp Crystal Lake again. I believe that he has a family who owns Camp Crystal Lake and who have owned it for a while, from what I gather. at least for the last 30 years or so. I don't know beyond that. But he's trying to open it up, and the only person who's shown up so far is a girl named Alice, played by Adrienne King, and she is a cool chick. She gives an okay performance. I like Steve Christie more than I like her because of his work ethic, because of just his personality in general. He has a little bit of that manliness to him, but Alice is okay. Alice is not dislikable. She's just fine. She's okay. She's our good girl, you know? And then we have some of the other people who are watching travel to this place. One in particular is a young girl who's going to be the cook named Annie, and Annie doesn't last long, let me tell you that. But everybody else we watch kind of show up here, one of them being Kevin Bacon, who to this day I still don't know his name in this film, which is a typical problem with Friday the 13th. It's not really about the characters, it's about how they die. They're cannon fodder, who cares? But Kevin Bacon will always be known as Kevin Bacon to me. I don't care if it's this, or Stir of Echoes, or whatever that TV show was he was on that was focused on Edgar Allan Poe. What was it, The Following? I think it was The Following. It doesn't matter what it is. Kevin Bacon is Kevin Bacon. I'll never know his character's name because he is Kevin Bacon. He's cool, though. Footloose. He's Kevin Bacon. I love the guy. He's a little wacko in real life, but I like him a lot. And he's in here. I say all that to say this. These people typically don't give a great performance. Not that they have really much to work with. The writing is not super strong. The guy who co-created this with the director, Sean S. Cunningham, Sean S. Cunningham went on to be involved as a producer and whatever from this point on, after part two and onward, I guess he did. But the writer of this film seems to never be connected, aside from a credit for writing characters like, you know, whoever, which is surprising to me. He is oddly not involved with almost anything. I saw that he wrote a couple of things on IMDb, not really much more beyond that. It's kind of sad. I feel bad for the guy. Not that the writing is super strong here, like I said, it's really not anything amazing, if I'm being honest with you. The best thing in the film is one of the performances I can't talk about. Yeah. So anyway, these folks are trying to open up this new camp. I said all that to say that. And somebody finds out who does not like that and starts to kill people at the camp. And we don't know if it's one of the people that are going to be a counselor, or maybe a cooker themselves, or maybe somebody who hasn't been hired on yet that's tracking this and possibly going to be hired. We don't really know anything about it yet, who it might be. The film, again, is kind of a murder mystery like a lot of slashers used to be once upon a time. And that part is not as engaging to me. I feel like it doesn't really land that as well as a murder mystery thriller thing. It's more of a thriller than anything. But it doesn't really pull through for me on that. Not the way something like Sleepaway Camp does, but Sleepaway Camp came out like 3 years later, so it's not really fair. We had like 4 Friday the 13th by the time that came out. But these feel like summertime movies. That's what I always liked about them. That's why I wanted to save them for this summer and not review them earlier in the year, like I kind of briefly mentioned in previous videos. I wanted to kind of wait until I could do something special at that time of the year, because every time I watch this movie, as much as I'm going to say something controversial, as much as I'm not a massive fan of the first Friday the 13th, I think it has its moments. I think it feels like a summertime movie. It's kind of meandering, though. Most of the film is meandering, especially in that third act, where Alice is kind of going around doing stuff like making coffee, touching a guitar, taking a nap. It just kind of drags to make the film an hour and 35 minutes long. You could cut a good 10 minutes out of this movie. You could, and I don't know why Sleepaway Camp got away with that in like all 3 of the OG 80s movies, but this couldn't do that. It's weird. But I enjoyed what the visual aspect of it was because of the cinematography. Not that it's amazing or anything. It's not like The Ritual from David Bruckner or anything like that in the shooting aspect. But the characters aren't super engaging. We have a lot of focus on these characters just doing things like swimming, putting a dock together. Those things could be fun if I cared more about these people. And maybe you care about Alice more than I do. I think she's just okay. It's not Adrienne King's fault. Again, it's more of a writing issue than anything. No one's really super important here, in my personal opinion, aside from Alice in the script, not so much on screen. But the big performance I wanted to talk about, I can't really talk about because I do spoiler-free reviews. In case somebody hasn't seen the film, I don't want to ruin it for them. But the ending of the film, to me, the twist is genius. The execution of it is not. It has its moments because of the performance of the person there. I really love that. I think that's a fantastic performance. That reveal could be so much better, but that performance really allowed it to be as good as it was, which is a great thing. I I don't really want to talk about that too much because I am worried that my mouth will get me into spoiler territory. So I'll move on to the next thing on my little list of categories here to discuss. Let's talk about the practical effects here. They were done by Tom Savini, an OG of the Friday the 13th series, and the OG of makeup art, whether it be, I think he did, like, Dawn of the Dead. I don't think he did Night of the Living Dead. I think he did, like, Dawn of the Dead, and I think he did Day of the Dead, too. The dude is incredible. His work is great, but I personally think this is some of his worst work. I don't care if it was, like, his first movie he did. I think it was. I could be wrong, but it was one of his earliest projects. A lot of the effects, because of the budget, in my personal opinion, seemed to be something that I think was too cheap looking. There were times, especially on DVD, it probably didn't look like this on VHS and everything, or even film in the theater itself when the film came out in 1980, but when you cut to certain things in the DVD, like somebody's neck, if they get cut across the neck, their skin is completely like rock gray, like granite gray, but the rest of their skin is like peach, yellow, whatever, and I'm like, why? Why did you make it gray? I know you didn't really have much reference in your little warehouse where you were probably off campus working on those practical effects and fake bodies and stuff. But man, when you get those shots of people getting killed or stabbed or whatever, which by the way, the kills are really lame in the movie, they look like shit, if I'm being honest with you. The fake blood looks good, but the actual, like, the skin of the whatever wounded part of a person looks like shit most of the time. Which is a shame. I wanted to like it more. But every time I watch this, I like it less and less. But with that being said, though, when you grow up on movies that are adult films on top of that, like this, when I've seen it a billion times, one of the earliest horror films I ever saw, Halloween was probably the first one I ever saw, but Friday the 13th Part 1 wasn't too far away from that, in my viewership, if you will. When you see something like this over and over again as a kid, and you love it so much as a kid like I used to, you miss a lot of details because you're used to kind of tuning out at certain parts of it. It's like when your mom or your dad give you like a speech about something that they've told you about and lectured you about like over and over again, and you just start to tune out the certain parts that you know what's coming. You just don't want to mock them to their face because they'll break your teeth out. But you know, you get a little annoyed, you tune out certain things. I do that with this movie now, but there are certain things when I'm really focused and paying attention in a dark room with my phone in another part of the house or something, I really pick up on certain details I never picked up on, like, well, just certain things that I want to go into that I really like, whether it be in certain performances, whether it be in certain parts of the script that I didn't really pay attention to this detail or that detail, which is nice for this movie to get better and better. But would we really celebrate this film if it came out now? If this was the first film and it came out now, in 2023, do you think it'd be a celebrated film? I'm not trying to be one of these people that look at the past and the quality and the perspective of what we have now. I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm saying is, if it was remade with modern technology, if it was made in that respect, and it was the first one ever to come out now, would this truly succeed? I don't think it would. I think Friday the 13th would have died in the water. I really believe that. I think this original film is not that special. I'm a person who loves these movies. It's got its moments in this film, and me growing up on them, to me, adds a little bit of a layer of nostalgia to it, for my experience, every time I watch it each year. Because I do typically watch this one each year. For whatever reason, I don't really know why, but I do. I typically enjoy that. I enjoy this movie to certain respects, but I do think it should have been chopped down a lot. There's a lot of moments that people in the fan base give excuse to for being draggy as more of suspense building, excuse me. And I think that's an excuse. when it's nothing interesting happening on the screen, to me that is bullshit at that point. That's how I feel about this movie. But the effects, one particular effect at the very end of the film, the last couple of things at the end of the film, look incredible. The last kill of the movie looks incredible. I love it. I think it looks fantastic for the 1980s, particularly the 1980 itself as a standalone year. It looks phenomenal. At this point, I don't really think we had much. I think this is the same year that Halloween 2 came out, I believe. I don't think it was 81, was it? I think it was 80 when Halloween 2 came out. If that was competing against this, to me, Halloween 2 beats it, for sure. For sure, I think it's a better movie than this. But anyway, let's talk about the music. Probably my favorite thing about this original film. It's probably the thing that drags me through the film as not so often as it's used. Harry Manfredini, who I can never get his name right. I always think it's Henry, and then other days I think it's Harry, and then the last name I just can't say because I have a mush mouth. and I just mess it up constantly. So Harry Manfredini, who I looked up, and I know his name is Harry Manfredini because that's what Google told me and Siri told me on my phone, that is the dude. His music in this film, he made a lot of music for most of these films. I think he made music all the way into like part 8 or 9, I think. The dude was around for a long time. And I love his music. I think the dude did an incredible job. I think the music here that he made, especially at the end with Alice and the Lake, it's wonderful. It is something so powerful. I remember hearing that song at the very end for the first time ever. The end credits song for the first time ever when I was a kid. And it gave me chills. There's something vivid and dreamlike about it. I don't have any words to explain it. But what's typically known as the Friday the 13th theme song that started in this movie, you know, the kind of like a Jaws thing, like da-na, that whole thing, I don't really love that like everybody else does. It's okay. It's okay. It has its moments. It can add some suspense every once in a while. And I feel like certain scenes, it kind of ruins the suspense in those scenes, in my personal opinion. But I do think certain songs are used wonderfully here. There's one 70s song used in this too, and it's used a couple of times in a diner scene, and then like at a small store, as a matter of fact. And I don't know what it is. It's something about spread your wings and fly. I'm just really bad with the names of songs. I can't really pick up lyrics a lot of the time for whatever reason, especially when they're background, very low volume types of stuff in movies and TV. But that song is beautiful. It was a great use here. I don't know how they got the quality rights to it to be able to use it for this film, but they were able to, with the kind of budget they had, which is bizarre. But the music, it's fantastic. It's wonderful in this movie, for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. Especially that end credit song. Moving along to the final part of this, I guess my closing thoughts. To me, this is not a mess of a movie, it's just a drag of a movie. I think it's a shame, because I really wanted to get on here and tell you how much I loved it this time around. But again, every time I watch this movie, I feel like I like it less and less. But I think that's a part of me getting older. I think it's a part of me getting older, watching things like, now that I've reviewed all the Halloween films and all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, I can watch what I want to watch out of those films. If I want to skip New Nightmare, I can do that. If I want to skip Halloween 5, I can do that. I have that freedom. I don't have to have that compulsion to finish all of it and watch the whole damn movie series every single day until I finish them all. Which gets old really quick, because I like video games more and more now. I like books more and more now, the older I get. So watching the same films I've seen a billion times over and over again, especially the ones that I don't like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, or Part 2 of that series, I can skip those things. It's kind of freeing. It's kind of freeing in a nice way. So, I don't know how often I'll keep watching this. I don't think I'm going to watch it yearly. It has that summertime feel that I love. It brings back some nostalgic memories for me. That's about it, man, if I'm being honest with you. Whereas when I look at future entries, even the next one immediately after this, Part 2, I love them so much more. I think they have so many great moments in those that make them so much more fun to watch and enjoyable. Even though I'm more of a fan from Part 4 onward, you know? But the earlier parts of the series, to me, are too slow. That's usually how I feel. But we'll get there when we talk about the future entries. For now, though, that is my thought on the original film. Kind of a boring film, with some okay kills. They're kind of lame most of the time, but a couple of really good ones. And an ending that I think was good. Not so much an execution, but a performance really brought that ending and that final twist in the film to life in a good way. You had like 2 good performances in the entire film. Maybe 3. If you talk about Alice being okay, then that's about 3 in the entire film. Or 2 good performances and 1 okay performance. Something like that. When it comes to Friday the 13th, the OG 1980 movie, uncut, cut, whatever, it doesn't really matter. If I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, I think I would lean towards giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. That might seem a little high for all the negativity I had towards this film in my review, but if I'm being honest with you, a little bit of the nostalgia fuels my review on that, and why I would rate it that high, a 3 out of 5. But it's gonna be, if I'm honest with you, it's gonna be one of the lowest rated in the series. It just will be. I'm sorry, it's gonna be like that. You'll see as I go along throughout my reviews, but just watch. We'll see what happens as these continue to come out. God willing, I'm able to review them all. I will do that. Anyway, 3 out of 5 stars for Friday the 13th Part 1. Now, please go check out Stranger Grayson's review. He put it up last night before we officially decided to collab on this, which is cool. Check his channel out. He's a great guy. Really love his videos. Somehow this boy manages to squeeze his reviews into like 10 minutes. I don't know how people do that. I don't know how they can do that. I'm so wordy and talkative like a fucking kid. I can't stop. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. God bless you all. Hopefully I'll see you in the upcoming videos here soon. It's gonna get kind of repetitive on some of them because I'll be like, Jason killed a bunch of campers, and then the next video will be Jason killed a bunch of campers again. Whatever. Anyway, thank you guys again. God bless you again, and goodbye.